I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, the latest on the fight to get a Marine veteran out of jail in Mexico. His lawyer is talking about his strategy tonight.
And now that the hotel tax is off the table, what's the city's plan B for expanding the convention center? I'm Peggy Pico. Also ahead, back to school tech gear, the trends, school requirements, and needs versus wants.
And we'll show you a dramatic demonstration of the dangers of making hash oil. Drug agents say they're finding more of these types of labs around San Diego. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. We began with the latest on the legal battle of a Marine veteran arrested in Mexico for bringing guns and ammunition across the border. His lawyer says customs officials who searched Andrew Tamarisi's car acted improperly. There was a news conference earlier today in Solana Beach with Tamarisi's mother, his lawyer, and supporters. Our Fronteras reporter, Jill Replogle, she joins us now with an update. So, Jill, remind us about some of the details of this case.
Sure. Marine Sergeant Andrew Tamarisi crossed into Tijuana on March 31st of this year. He was stopped by customs officials in Mexico, and when they searched his truck, they found 3 loaded weapons and more than 400 rounds of ammunition. He's charged with 3 counts of carrying illegal firearms and ammunition in Mexico, and he's being held at El Hongo Federal Prison near Tecate. Sergeant Tamarisi says he didn't mean to cross the border. He just took a wrong turn.
And this is his 3rd lawyer in the case, and I understand he announced a new strategy today. What is that?
The lawyer's name is Fernando Benitez. He contends, that Mexican customs officials didn't follow the law when they searched Tamarisi's car at the border.
There were almost 8 hours of Andrew being held under arrest in handcuffs at the border inspection checkpoint, and it is not justified. Not under the Mexican Constitution. He did not have an interpreter present. He was not afforded the right to counsel immediately. And we are going to argue that to get most of the evidence excluded.
Benitez says he plans to file an extraordinary motion next week in hopes of getting most of the Mexican government's evidence thrown out. He says these types of motions are rare, but he thinks it's worth a shot.
And Tamarisi's mother was also at the news conference today. What did she have to say about how her son is doing?
She said he's being treated fairly well in the prison, El Hongo. She had good things to say about the prison director. She said she gets to talk to her son on the phone for 2 hours a day. There was a supporter at the news conference who asked Jill how people could help, and she said to send letters.
Because he is in El Hongo, he's in solitary confinement. Any words, any support, prayers.
All right, we'll be following the outcome of this case. Fronteras reporter Joe Replogle. The Federal Department of Veterans Affairs says San Diego vets can enroll in programs at the local campus of the University of Phoenix. There was a threat of a ban because of a state audit finding the campus went over an enrollment cap, but the VA says it's got new information from the school contradicting the audit. Now, the school says it still has questions, though, about how the audit was done, but is pleased by the VA's action. The Chula Vista Elementary School District and its union are deadlocked in contract negotiations tonight. KPBS education reporter Matt Bowler is in the newsroom with an update. So, Matt, how long has the stalemate been going on?
Well, the union and the district have been at loggerheads since June of last year. If they reach a 2-year agreement this year, it'll be sort of retroactive and applied and only have an effect on the remaining year left.
And what are some of the main issues or concerns here?
So 4 of the top issues are, first, class size. The union wants guarantees that it'll stay small. The district says they already have one of the smallest teacher-to-student ratios in the county, but the union wants it in writing. The second is medical costs. This is one of their real back-and-forth issues. The union says it costs way too much. They say close to $10,000 a year if you have 2 dependents. The district says they've worked out the best deal they can and that most teachers don't spend anywhere near that. Teacher salaries are the third reason. Teachers haven't had a raise in over 7 years. However, they have been getting their state-mandated step and column pay. The district thinks that that should be counted or considered as a raise as well. And the addition of about 50 new Common Core resource teachers. This is something that's a little bit more controversial. Teachers say they aren't necessary, and what the union says teachers really want is more Common Core training. So over the past 3 years, they've had a total of about 2 weeks total Common Core training.
And what happens if mediation fails here?
Well, then they go into a final step before the strike. It's called a fact-finding, and that means that the two parties kind of present each of their cases to this three-person panel. And if the panel isn't able to help and they're still in a deadlock, then the teachers could strike. And union members overwhelmingly pre-approved the union to call a strike if they can't come to an agreement, and that they say that could happen as soon as September or October.
And we know you'll stay on top of this. KPBS education reporter Matt Bowler. San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer and labor leaders have agreed on a pilot program to reward city workers who come up with ideas to save money. Faulconer says San Diego Works will complement the managed competition program, where the city aims to reduce costs by letting the public and private sectors compete for the same contract. But Faulconer says that process has taken more than 2 years to implement.
Part of what San Diego Works is about is getting these good ideas going now. And I know that there's a lot of great ideas because I've talked to folks, and we want to harness that creativity immediately.
All city employees are encouraged to participate in the one-year pilot program. Employee rewards will range up to a maximum of $5,000 per person, depending on how much savings their proposal generates. City Council is expected to ratify the agreement on Thursday. San Diego Convention Center has hired a consultant to help sell naming rights to the facility. Center directors say they can raise money for upgrades and repairs by letting companies sponsor sections of the building. The company they've hired is called the Superlative Group. It's already working with the Metropolitan Transit System and also handles naming rights for stadiums and convention centers across the country. The funding plan to expand the downtown convention center is a no-go, and the fate of the project is up in the air. Peggy Pico finds out what's at stake.
To recap the decision, a state appeals court ruled the city's plan to finance the $520 million convention center expansion by raising the hotel room tax violates the law that requires two-thirds voter approval for a new tax. Here with further details are my guest, attorney Corey Briggs, who filed the suit against the plan, and Stephen Johnson, VP of Public Affairs for the San Diego Convention Center. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Now, Corey, city officials originally said the tax was actually a fee for revenue generation. Why did the court disagree with this?
Well, the city called it a special tax in their authorizations. The reason the Court of Appeal disagreed is because under Propositions 13 and 218, taxes have to be approved by the electorate, and the electorate under the Constitution means flesh and blood voters like you and me.
And Stephen, remind us of what the expansion would have looked like or might look like, and why you think it's necessary.
Sure. The expansion would add an additional 220,000 square feet of exhibit space to the 530 that are already there, making it the largest contiguous exhibit hall on the West Coast. About 100,000 square feet of additional meeting space and an 80,000 square foot ballroom, topped by a 5-acre rooftop park with an outdoor amphitheater.
And again, why do you think it's necessary?
Our clients have told us it's necessary. Besides Comic-Con, which often gets mentioned, we have clients such as Biocom and National Association of Realtors and others that have outgrown or are going to outgrow the building as it currently is. So we're trying to accommodate the growth of some of the groups that want to return to San Diego, big lucrative business, including Comic-Con, but also be able to attract additional business from groups that have never been able to fit in the current building, as well as hold two groups in there simultaneously.
The city is still looking into whether or not to appeal the decision, is my understanding. If this ruling stands, what does it mean for the expansion? Does it mean it goes back to square one? Do you start all over?
No, we don't go back to square one. We've done a lot of due diligence and work on this project since 2008, 2009, all the way up to now. I think what we need to do is try to revisit how we can finance the plan, and if we can't finance the current plan, what are the next steps from that?
Do you think that a Charger Stadium proposal might be part of that consideration?
I think we're all waiting to see what the Chargers are going to propose.
And Corey, you're also challenging other aspects of this project in particular. Are you opposed to the expansion altogether, and if so, why?
A general expansion, no. The client's concerns are price, financing mechanism, and location. We've now dealt with the financing mechanism. The problem with putting it on the waterfront is that the space where they're going to build it was promised to be dedicated as a park in perpetuity. What we think is that they need to look at an alternative site, and that's why we sued over the Coastal Commission's decision placing it there.
And that said, Stephen, does that mean you're more concerned about further legal setbacks?
Well, the biggest setback is the financing. And so I think right now we passed Coastal Commission unanimously, and I think that's a solid decision that will stand. I think what we need to do now is revisit the financing.
And Corey, why do you think this issue, we're talking about the convention center, I think most people could probably agree that Stephen makes a good argument as to why it might be expanded, but why do you think public projects and the funding and how they're funded is important to San Diegans? Well,
this is a really good example. You had a group of people approving a tax, namely the hoteliers, who stood only to benefit. They bear no burdens whatsoever from the additional cost of a tourist coming to San Diego. In our society, the Constitution says that when you have a funding mechanism like that, it's called a tax, that everybody has to vote on it. In this case, the problem of coming up with a way of paying for the expansion was worse than the cure, or the cure was worse than the problem, because the cure is disenfranchising all of us in our right to vote.
And Stephen, what do you think, what's next? Let's say going to voters, do you think that's likely? Like, what are the next steps?
The next steps sit with the mayor and the city council as it relates to whether or not they want to take the appeal to the Supreme Court, or whether they want to sit back and talk to the hospitality industry about other ways to proceed on this expansion. That decision sits with them.
Will the convention center be taking new ideas in order to come up with perhaps a plan B?
I think we're open to all sorts of ideas as we have been through this whole process.
All right. Attorney Corey Briggs and Convention Center Stephen Johnson, thank you very much.
Thank you.
A U.S. Major General was killed today, and 15 American and foreign soldiers were injured after a gunman dressed as an Afghan soldier turned on Allied troops. It happened at a defense university in Afghanistan. Harold Green was a two-star general and the highest-ranking American killed in combat since 1970. The wounded included a German general and 2 Afghan generals. A second American aid worker with Ebola arrived today in Atlanta. She's being treated at Emory University Hospital with a drug developed by a San Diego company. The aid worker has agreed to take the drug, though it has never been tested on humans. The other patient, a doctor, is also taking the drug. We will have more on Ebola and the treatment tomorrow on KPBS Midday and here on Evening Edition. Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield are teaming up to create a new health information exchange. It's an electronic portal for sharing patient medical records. They're calling it the California Integrated Data Exchange, or CAL Index for short. Insurance companies say it will have information for 9 million patients, giving doctors and hospitals quick access to existing conditions and medications. Look at there, a dramatic demonstration of the dangers of making hash oil. Staged by county emergency personnel today, hash oil is made by extracting THC from marijuana with butane. Firefighters say there's been an increase in emergency calls to hash oil labs. They've put out this video to show what can go wrong.
We're trying to simulate a real extraction with a real person here, with temperature labels on the clothing, under the skin. We have blast sensors that are going to be located outside, with temperature sensors outside also, and we'll be able to remotely activate this butane. The butane actually got into the wall and exploded the wall out. This chair is fully melted, and this guy would have lost probably all the skin on his chest, arms, and legs right here.
Drug agents say they found hash oil labs at 75% of the illegal marijuana growing operations they raided last year, and there were explosions or fires at about half of those sites. 2 wildfires are still burning tonight and threatening homes in Northern California, just north of Redding. 8 homes have been destroyed. Thunderstorms are proving to be a mixed blessing, though. They've brought light rain and some increased humidity, but there's also an increased danger of lightning strikes, sparking more fires. U.S. Forest Service will soon have to scale back some fire prevention projects so it can pay for fighting this year's fires. Agricultural Secretary Tom Vilsack says money for firefighting will run out by the end of the month. He says it's an annual exercise dipping into prevention funds to fight fires. He's now lobbying for more budget money for firefighting. Governor Jerry Brown released a proposal for a $6 billion water bond. It's about half the cost of a bond measure already expected on the November ballot. Brown wants a swap. In fact, in a letter on his campaign website, he says the existing bond is, quote, pork-laden and not reasonable or affordable, end quote. Brown's plan includes over $1 billion for statewide water habitat and watershed projects and $2 billion for water storage projects. The legislature is expected to consider a new water bond later this month. Supporters of the state's high-speed rail project are seeing a recent court decision as a victory. A state appellate court ruled the state could use bonds to help pay for the project. State Senate Pro Tem Darrell Steinberg says now the decision has been made. It's time to get going on the project.
Well, the courts decided that we could go forward with the distribution of the bond proceeds. Look, high-speed rail, I think it's time to move on. I think it's time, whether you're for it or against it. We've made the investment. We're going to build. We're going to create jobs. And let's give it a chance to succeed.
There are still a number of pending lawsuits challenging the rail project. Attorneys for plaintiffs in some of the suits say the state does not have all the necessary and vital environmental permits. Solar industry workers are pushing for a bill to make it easier to get a permit for solar rooftops. The executive director of the California Solar Energy Industries Association says the bill would also make installing solar less expensive.
One of the most stubborn costs that adds to the price tag of a solar system is getting a permit through your local government. AB 2188 would streamline that process and cut the cost of installing solar by as much as $1,500 to $3,500 per home.
The bill would also make the permit process faster. Supporters of the bill say in some cities and counties it can take up to 6 months to get a permit. Plastic bag makers are ramping up their campaign against a ban on their products.
It's the latest Sacramento scam. Grocers gave millions to the Sacramento politicians. Now the politicians are pushing a bill that would make the grocers billions.
The bill hasn't passed the assembly yet. It would ban flimsy plastic grocery bags. Stores would charge 10 cents for a sturdier plastic or for paper bags. While opponents call it a dirty deal, supporters say it would clean up the environment. Electronic gadgets have become a back-to-school staple. Peggy Pico takes a look at the newest technology for students.
Joining me to help sort through the latest tech devices aimed at helping school kids and their parents are my guest, tech expert Jim Berry with the nonprofit Consumer Electronics Association, and Emil Ahangarzadeh, Director of Digital Solutions at San Diego County Office of Education. Welcome.
Nice to be with you.
Now, Jim, what's trending in high-tech devices for students this year?
Well, trending overall, some for students are wearable technology. And here I had to show you these, right? This is my Jawbone Up Fitness, and then this is the Samsung Gear. This is for some kids, but not older kids and stuff. But that's one of the big
older
trends.
Kids, except he has one as
right,
well.
Here, let me take a quick picture of you.
Kids.
So how about for the actual students and doing work at school?
Well,
you brought some examples.
Laptops and tablets, and one of the biggest questions I get is, should I get my student a laptop or a tablet computer? Tablets are great, iPads, Windows versions, and you also have the Google Android versions, but you really need a laptop. You need it for the keyboard, you need it for the inputs and outputs, and for the power and the speed.
And you've got some different varieties here. You've got one for somebody very young.
That is from VTech. That's the InnoTab, and those start at about $70 or so, and they're for little kids, 3 to 6. So this does two things. It gets the kids started with tablets, and it gets their little hands off your iPad or your tablet. So it gets them started.
I noticed a couple other things here. I noticed something I haven't seen seen in a long time, and that's calculators.
Yeah, don't forget calculators. If you've got kids in school, especially the scientific ones, these are from Casio. You notice they make them in nice colors now. They start at, like $10 or so, and up to, for a real serious scientific or graphing calculator, might be as much as $50. But think about that compared to what these were when they started many years ago. So nice colors, and for your students that need a calculator, you can get
and
them.
they still use those.
They do. That's another thing somebody asked me. Well, you can do all this stuff on your smartphone. Yes, but for a lot of school things, you need a real calculator. These from Casio are terrific.
Okay, Emil, how does San Diego County approach the use of technology in the classroom? What's being used and what's not allowed?
Well, we try to take what we try to do is try to avoid what we call the ready, fire, aim approach, which is what a lot of schools and in many cases families and parents do as well. Is they go to the device first before asking themselves, "So, what is my student going to use this device for?" And often when we find when we analyze the objectives of what the teachers and the schools are trying to do and what the students are trying to do, we find that the devices that have been purchased are often not the right device to have in the classroom. So the San Diego County Office of Education is working really closely with the juvenile court and community schools nowadays. And one of the things we discovered is that the Chromebook device is actually one of the most effective tools to have in the classroom. But that came about as a result of an analysis having been conducted first to make the determination that the device is right for the cause, not simply because somebody heard a commercial about a device.
And I'll ask you both this, starting with Jim. What about apps? Are there some important apps for students to have?
There's lots of apps. And again, it depends on what you're doing. It's starting as little as flashcards for either grammar or for math for grade school students, all the way up to very specific ones for, again, scientific kind of stuff or really serious college students. So there's lots and lots of apps. There are literally millions of apps, and for students, there's hundreds of thousands.
Well, Emil, is there particular ones that the school districts like, let's say for testing, homework, maybe parental notifications?
Sure. There's a social learning network app called Edmodo that we see being used often in school systems. That in essence, it's a lightweight learning management system that has a beautiful mobile application version that kids love to use. It's got a Facebook look to it, but it allows the teachers to be able to assign homework, for the students to be able to submit their homework, and the parents to be able to keep an eye on what's happening in the school. But there's some really hot apps out there that go well beyond things like Edmodo, as I'm sure you know.
What devices does the classroom, or in the classroom as far as San Diego County schools are concerned?
Well, it's interesting, Peggy. It used to be that the school would make these kinds of decisions, but more and more we're seeing a trend towards this movement called BYOD, or bring your own device, where the students are bringing their own devices because they have their own preferences. They have their own approach or their own style, or they have their own settings already in place. It does cause a problem, however, because now you've got the school district that has to support many different types of devices as opposed to, let's say, the iPad that they've selected to bring in.
Well, we have a lot more about this on our website. Yes. I'm sure people are interested. Jim Berry and Emil Garzadeh, thank you so much.
Pleasure. Nice to be with you.
I'm Gwen Eiffel. On the next news hour, we talk with the president of Somalia. His country has been fighting Islamic militants for the last 2 decades. That's Tuesday on the PBS NewsHour.
Criminal charges have been filed in a Major League Baseball doping scandal. One clinic owner has already agreed to plead guilty. Anthony Bosch is accused of distributing performance-enhancing drugs to professional baseball players and to high school athletes. Last year, 13 major leaguers were suspended, including Alex Rodriguez of the Yankees and 2 San Diego Padres. No players, by the way, are named in the latest criminal case. Another shakeup in the Padres front office. Vice President A.J. Hinch has resigned. The team says he will seek other baseball opportunities. Just 6 weeks ago, Padres fired their general manager, Josh Burns. Hinch released a statement today saying he thinks the organization is ready for a transition, and now's the time for him to move on. County supervisors are backing a bid to bring the next America's Cup to San Diego. The city is one of 2 finalists for the 2017 race. San Diego last hosted the America's Cup, you may recall, back in 1995, with the yacht sailing off Point Loma. If the city wins, though, the 2017 event, it would be held on San Diego Bay, making it more spectator-friendly. The Encinitas Little League All-Stars are getting a night off after winning a doubleheader yesterday. They're competing for a slot in the Little League World Series. Right now, They're 2-1 in the Western Regional Tournament in San Bernardino, and they're guaranteed a spot in the semifinals. They'll get an early start tomorrow morning with an 8:30 game against Las Vegas. And let's check out our forecast now. Clouds along the coast in the morning. Temperatures will be mostly in the mid-70s and sunshine will clear out. A bit warmer in the inland valleys, temperatures in the low 80s. Cloudy in the morning, though, giving way to sunshine, just like along the coast. Clear in the mountain areas over the next few days, mostly in the upper 70s, dipping into the upper 50s at night. As for the desert, plenty of sunshine, temperatures close to 100 degrees. Let's recap some of our top stories now. The attorney for Marine veteran Andrew Tamarisi says Mexican customs officials acted improperly when they searched his car last March. They found guns as well as ammunition illegal in Mexico. Tamarisi's been in jail since then. His lawyer says Mexican authorities held him for hours without a translator and without telling him he had a right to an attorney. Some major issues being debated in the Chula Vista Elementary School District. The district there and its teachers union are deadlocked in contract discussions. The union has already authorized a strike if the deadlock isn't broken. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.